So thank you all for coming in. I got ahead of ourselves, but as you know, it's the Chicago Power Platform Users Group, which has turned mostly into the Copilot Users Group as of lately, a Copilot Studio. Thank you everybody for coming. For anybody who's new, either here or online. I am Craig Janke. I am a technical architect. I work out of the second floor of the Anon building. So what we do here is more like envisioning sessions. I like to think of our whole floor as like a mini museum of science and industry. We have some exhibits on what customers can see and use. So kind of to put like an incubator for like, hey, these are ideas. So we have a lot of things that work more off of IoT and Azure type of resources, reporting and things like that. We have some AI stuff going on. We're in the process of putting some new ones in. So like in 6 months, we're going to redo our innovation factory, put some walls up there, put a big screen on it, make that a fully Teams enabled room. We're getting a couple of AI ones that are going to replace where our manufacturing, we had a conveyor belt and stuff like that. So customers come in here and people like me and Aurelio, one of our other teams, we will give them an envisioning session, help them kind of decide where they should go. And that should turn into help them on their journey. Mostly it's AI right now, but so where should they get started? How should they govern? What kind of use cases can they do? Then we'll help with architectural designs and we'll do prototyping. And at that point, we try to turn them over to either our field people or somebody like Ralph. And Ralph, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Okay. Turn
Yeah,
it
I'll
over?
turn.
All right, so Ralph Rivas, National Solutions Architect from Sogeti, also now a national offer leader, because it turns out all of these are being packaged in as something called offers. I guess I'm at that nosebleed level at last. All right. Effectively, as they say, Microsoft has to scale. If Microsoft were to serve and make everyone happy, which they are so wholly want to do, they're going to need friends, and that's what we are, one of the partners to help that stuff happen. My specialty is in the biz apps area, and for the folks who have been following us for a long time, I am Power Platform. I got the MVP in it as well. You were an MVP also for a little while until you were brought back into the fold. And my MVP is in Copilot Studio as well as, of course, Power Apps. I think you can only have 2 at a time for one of those, but I think the big bottom line is all the stuff that we've been doing in Power Platform. Even before COVID, we were doing Teams hybrid meetings on this. All of that's now coming into head, so to speak, in that everything low code is now understood as the entrance to make all stuff happen. So as they say, if you're doing this stuff now, and if you've been doing it for a while, you are in a happy place because your tools are only going to get better. And you get to play with some of the tools before some of the others do. More importantly, the tools are a little bit easier to understand, which is great. And that's part of it over here. I mean, today is a great opportunity. We get to talk to one of the folks that essentially has something to say about those particular tools and let us know how that's going to go. And I'm very excited to be here just for that reason. So fanboying out here, so going to slow down for a little bit. And I would like to get the show on the road. I'm here in Chicago. And well, we'll have some slidey information about Sogeti, but that's not as important as the community stuff that we're here and we're all about. All right, shall we?
Yeah. So I joined Microsoft last year, and so still fairly new to Microsoft, but worked on a lot of the AI stuff previously. I was at a startup in the Bay Area for about 10 plus years, doing AI and building agents for sales and marketing and certain business functions. And before that, I was at Google and Yahoo, and then I worked at Microsoft 20 plus years ago, and I'm back. And a couple of reasons. One is I think Microsoft clearly has a lot of great assets to work with. They also have a lot of GPUs to play with, which is also a huge plus. But just we're at a phase where we have these amazing models, and these new models are coming out almost on a weekly or monthly basis. And the capabilities of these models are immense and just getting better and better and better. And the key to the unlock to this is how do we build applications on top of these models that really expose these to end users so they know how to get value. It's not just enough to go to your favorite Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever and just prompt it. These systems are capable of automating end-to-end workflows that can help improve your experience and your work and jobs to be done. So that's kind of the focus area. That's what brought me to Microsoft. That's what our group focuses on. So Copilot Apps is about building the world-class pre-built agents and copilots for specific roles. So we build them for sales, we build them for customer service, we build them for finance. And so it works out of the box. And one nice thing about it is it integrates really well with M365. Because a lot of the work that's being done is within the creative spaces, being done in teams. Like if you take, for example, a sales rep is selling in Teams calls. They're selling when they're writing emails in Outlook. They're not really selling when they're in their CRM system. They're not really selling when they're in Salesforce or Dynamics. That's more like a data bookkeeping kind of place. And so by being able to build these agents that kind of work across different systems, you get a lot of value for the end user. And that's one of the big benefits of agents. And so I had a few slides. I don't want to get into too much slides here, but I thought it'd be helpful just to talk a little bit about copilots and agents and what these mean. So when ChatGPT came out, that was kind of like a big pinnacle moment. And ChatGPT, by nature and its name, is chat. And so we kind of took that as, okay, well, let's build a bunch of chat experiences and put them in our variety of different products that we have at Microsoft. So we built copilots, Excel, there's copilots, Outlook, and so on. And our belief is that if we put a copilot there and it had the intelligence of these large language models, that it can help alleviate maybe 20% of the work being done. But humans would still be in control of most of the work. 80+% of work is still being done by humans. Kind of similar to how you use your Bing web search or something like that, where you're getting information and it helps you, but it's not really doing the work. But what's interesting is these models have improved so much so that you can argue that these copilots are actually doing more than that. Like, for example, if you look at software engineering, GitHub Copilot in particular. GitHub Copilot is one where you're kind of in your IDE, like VS Code, and it can suggest code suggestions for you based on what you want. Those code suggestions get accepted like over 30% of the time. In other words, like AI is writing like 30% of the code that's being written today, which is pretty remarkable. We're already, and it's not just for software engineering. We see this happening in other functions of the business as well. But if we want to kind of get to a world where most of the work is being done by AI, we have to introduce a new concept. And that concept is an agent. And the reason for this is when you're using Copilot, the human has to prompt it and talk to it. And so you're by very nature not automated, right? It's a human-driven activity, humans in control. Yes, it's doing more and more work because these models are getting better and better. But in order to do real automation, you can't have it be this prompt-based thing. It has to be something that kind of runs autonomously, something that can run automatically, kind of like a self-driving car. And so we need agents for this. And an agent is something where it could use the LLM, it could use the large language model, but it's actually doing work automatically. So say, for example, an email comes in, the agent will just read that email and then respond automatically without a user intervening. That would be an example of an agent. And our group is actually focusing primarily on building agents. And what's interesting is as you kind of go from Copilot to agent, the agents get closer to the business impact, right? Because if you're in a Copilot world, it's really about helping the human. It's a productivity boost. It's like, I helped you save time. But here you can have an agent that literally goes and, like, for example, sends an email to a prospect and that prospect ends up buying the product. So you actually get closer to the revenue and to larger impact as you get more and more agentic. So the more automation you have, the bigger the impact. This is kind of like an end game slide because I think it's kind of helpful to kind of see like where this culminates, because we are about impact. And kind of following the same slider we had before, where we go from assistive to more autonomous. I wanted to kind of talk about our offerings that we have, at least for sales. We have service and finance, but I thought it might be helpful just to spell this out with one clear example. So on the assistive side, we have something like sales chat. So if you go into M365 Copilot, you'll see like there's a sales thing on the side. There's a rail, has researcher, sales, analyst, or it's coming soon, it'll be like that. And when you click on sales, it'll actually go and allow you to communicate with all your systems that you have that have sales data. For example, Salesforce or Dynamics, but you don't need to go into that system. And this is actually really beneficial because, for example, let's say I'm having a meeting with Walmart, right? I'm not even a salesperson, but a lot of the interesting information about Walmart is actually in the CRM system. It talks about their deal size, how much money they're spending with us, who's met with them in the past, what are the blockers, all these challenges. That's still useful for me, even though I'm not a sales rep. And so when I search through M365 Copilot and it has access to the sales experience, I can just simply type in, tell me everything I need to know about Walmart. And not only will it go and access the information to the CRM because it can access it in the sales chat because it's all natural language, but it can also access all the information that's in M365 about Walmart. Because I have emails with Walmart, I have Teams messages with Walmart, I have PowerPoints and Word docs. So we can bring all that information in one response. And it saves considerable time. We have sales reps who are using this, and they literally claim that it saves them 5-6 hours a week alone, just avoiding account research. Because when they go into the CRM, they have to go and look up Walmart. They find one opportunity, they have to click on multiple different tabs, and then they go find the next opportunity because there could be like 20 opportunities for Walmart. This all kind of comes together, aggregated, summarized. And because it's within a Copilot experience, you can actually chat with it further. You can say, hey, take all this data and turn it into a table, or show me the graph and show me how Walmart's spend with us has changed over time. And it just starts doing it. And you just do everything in one experience, which is the Microsoft M365 Copilot. And we have this belief at Microsoft that we want to create one Copilot experience, and that becomes your companion. And it kind of follows you. You can do everything within that Copilot. So you don't have to have many different Copilots, because when we came out, we had a lot of different Copilots. We're trying to simplify that story and kind of build it around the Microsoft Copilot, M365 Copilot. But we believe that you might have one Copilot, but you might have many, many agents. And agents are things that are kind of tied to specific workflows and KPIs. So let's kind of move along and kind of add more automation to this. So this is kind of like the middle where you're doing 40% of the work with Copilot. So lead intelligence, what this does is actually goes and automatically researches your leads. So let's say you have a lead that comes through, let's say it's a IBM or something. And what this will do is we'll actually go, and this is a little bit agentic, it'll actually go and research IBM. And it actually goes to the web, uses Bing search, to go and look at your CRM, go look inside your office information, wherever it can find, to see what's new about IBM, generate all those insights. And then not only that, but it can actually create email drafts. Right, and say, like, let's say IBM is expanding office space in your region, it can actually create that email draft, give it to the sales rep, and the sales rep can then tweak that email draft and then decide to send it or not. So the sales rep is still in control. So it's not full automation, so you're kind of in the middle. But this has been huge for us and for customers that we're working with. We see sales reps who are using this are generating more pipeline than reps who are not. We've done A/B tests on this. And even on the first part, sales chat, it's more of we see usage gone up significantly, driving usage for M365 Copilot. But in particular, we see sales reps are really happy with this. I put these numbers here, but they're more illustrative. I had to change it. But we actually presented this slide to Judson, who runs our sales team at Microsoft. And what we would like is all of our customers have a slide like this, right? So it's not just about AI, it's about what's the impact of AI. But we see in the first category that sales reps are actually really happy with this. 100% of the sales reps that we surveyed said that they would be incredibly unhappy if we turned it off. And so it's kind of like you want to focus more on usage as you kind of on the left side, and then you start getting closer and closer to revenue when you start going more to the right. And the final one, which is like the exciting one, is can we actually build an autonomous sales rep? Sales rep has no human in the loop. Sales rep that can go and automatically email your leads, follow them if they have questions, answer those questions, and get them to the point where they're interested in buying your product. All autonomous. Sounds like science fiction, but we've actually built this. And we've actually deployed this inside of Microsoft. We can't cite specific numbers yet, but we have seen an increase in qualified pipeline and in the response rate, which is great. But it's not just about trying to automate sales. It's a lot bigger than that. It's actually, can we build a better experience for the end user, like for the prospect or customer? Because today, what do they get? They basically have either sales reps or marketing emails being sent to that customer or prospect. And those are based on templates. Someone wrote a template, we take that template and we just blast it to like a lot of people. That's not a good experience for the end user, right? It's not a personalized experience. So the value of being able to use an agent is they can then go and do all this research about that particular company. It can go find the latest email conversations that have happened with that person, whatever it might be, and come up with a personalized message for that user. And that personalization has a yield returning higher response rates, but just a better experience for the customer. So one example, we're working with a variety of companies. One company that we work with, they have sales reps, so they clock out at 5 p.m. on a Friday, right? And then they get leads coming in at like 6 p.m., 7 p.m. on a Friday, and no one responds to them until Monday morning. And for their business, it's actually really important they respond quickly because decisions can be made even over that weekend. It's kind of like the equivalent of, let's say you're like in your Amazon shopping cart and we made you wait for 3 days before you can buy it. Chances of you coming back and buying is actually really low. But we put our customers and prospects through this experience all the time, right? Even if you send them on a weekday during week hours, you might not get a response back until next day. And so the one value that you get with using agents is that you can respond immediately, right? And it doesn't go to sleep. You can respond like in a minute. Have an email come in on Saturday midnight, it's going to respond. It doesn't go to sleep. So you get personalization, but you also get scale. You get timeliness. And so there's all these benefits that are great for the end user because they want faster responses. They want more quality and care in their support they get from us.
Not that anybody would do that at Microsoft, but I've worked at other organizations where a request might come in and it might not be of a lot of value. So they go lower on the rail too, right? So this can get a response back immediately. So that's pretty awesome.
Yes. And we see this being multi-channel too. Like it's not just like sending emails. It could be put onto the website. So you have like a chat experience there. You can use it with voice as well, which is pretty exciting. You can do all sorts of things. Now, one of the things that we're exploring is because we've seen such great advances in like code generation from these LLMs. That's one of the best use cases for AI right now. It's like just the ability to write code. And so what this agent can do, it can actually do really cool things like it can actually not only come up with the best response to respond to that lead, but it can actually create a link and create a website. And that website is personalized to that lead. So it takes all the data and conversation that's happening with that lead. It goes, okay, well, let me build a personalized web portal for that user, and I'll host it too. I'll include that in the email message it sends. And the way it's doing that, it's actually using that code generator, the ability to write code. It's actually writing the web page, like a coder would. And so the equivalent is like you're taking a sales rep, and imagine giving that sales rep a team. They have their own developer, data scientist, their own researcher. Like you have a full team for every rep. Now, if you did this in practice, like with humans, that would be the most expensive sales team in the world. Like you couldn't justify it, right? But it would be the best sales team in the world to go against. But it's actually now possible because we have agents. We can actually scale this and actually make that possible. So the fact that we're already able to do this today is pretty remarkable. And as these models get better and better, these capabilities and experiences that we're going to provide our customers are getting better. Anyways, I don't want to throw too many slides at you, but I want to kind of make this free form, but I'd love to hear kind of what you guys are thinking of and what you're building and how we can help.
So really quickly, this was done in Copilot Studio. It's not somehow behind the scenes AI Foundry, for example, making this happen.
That's a good question. So we have accessibility with Copilot Studio. So for example, if a customer wants an autonomous sales rep, we typically need data from the company. Copilot Studio makes this really simple because Copilot Studio has a knowledge system, has lots of connectors, like 400 plus connectors. So a company can actually add their data to Copilot Studio self-service. And then our agent can learn from that, and use that to generate better responses. And so that's one of the nice things with this offering is that sometimes if you go and you like either try to build this internally or if you go and try to buy it from a different vendor or something like that, you can hit a wall because they kind of build you an app and it's kind of a one size fits all. And the moment you want to make it extensible and make it your own, you can't. And because Microsoft has all the layers of the stack, like you can go all the way down to Foundry, you can go all the way down to Azure, or you can go up to Copilot Studio. You have many different ways you can customize it depending on the level of customization you want to do. So it doesn't stop. And that's really important for us because when we work with customers, there's nuances in their data, there's nuances in how they want to run things. For example, one of the things that this exposes is an API endpoint. So it actually gives an API to the customer, we let them decide how they want. So you could literally drop it in however you want. You can even drop this into Copilot Studio in your existing chat. You could create a topic, that's a trigger. That trigger calls an API endpoint. And now you have your chatbot is powered by the most powerful for doing sales intelligence. So it's very interconnected with our ecosystem.
You mentioned that there's a lot of different co-pilots and I think you said you're trying to consolidate them. Is that what's happening? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so it's more of, we see, I think when the Copilot stuff came out, I think it's fair to say, like, I think it's fair to say Microsoft's a Copilot company with all the marketing and blitz that we do around it.
Yes.
But it can be overwhelming for customers when they hear Copilot everywhere. And then they go, which Copilot do I go to? And so we do want to gravitate towards M365 Copilot inside the work experience. If you're in a company, we want M365 Copilot to be your single companion. Now, that doesn't mean that Copilots elsewhere don't exist. It just means that we want that to be the end all be all. If you had to pick a spot, like just like how you do a web search today, you have one place where you can do it. You have that place and you know it kind of covers all your bases. And so all the existing Copilot agents that have been built can theoretically connect into M365 Copilot. So you have like a universal view of everything going on to that Copilot. Now, when you go into Outlook or when you go into Dynamics or if you go into Power Apps, there are Copilots there as well. And so the way to think about that is we sort of want to follow you wherever you are. But there are cases where we can be more contextually relevant within an app, depending on your intent. Like I'll give you an example. Like if you're in, I don't know, like Dynamics or something, or CRM system, and let's say you have an opportunity of like Walmart's opportunity open up, and then you have the Copilot inside Dynamics there. And as you're chatting with the Copilot, what that Copilot could do is it can actually take into context that you have the Walmart opportunity open. And then it can take that, so you don't have to write in, I'm looking at Walmart right now, what should I do? You just say, what's the deal size? And it'll just know that you're referencing it. So there's value to context within the app, but we want to provide you a home page for your ability to kind of search over the whole. So.
Does that mean that, so a lot of these different Copilots, there's a different subscription for each one. And I could buy Copilot for security, I can buy GitHub Copilot, I can buy M365 Copilot. In order to get the experience you described, do I still need to buy the extra subscriptions? Are they integrate better or are they included in M365 Copilot subscriptions?
Yeah, that's your question. So if there is an integrate, so like for some of these, like GitHub Copilot, that one makes more sense to do just within VS Code or wherever you integrated it. And so, but if M365 Copilot adds support for GitHub Copilot, that shouldn't require additional license or additional type of payment. It should just be a hook into your existing subscription for that Copilot. And so we want to be reasonable when it comes to those things. But there will be a marketplace. There are literally thousands of agents being built at Microsoft in like months. Like just 1 month, there's like thousands of agents being created. And so we kind of see this, like we need a way to aggregate these agents. And so there's gonna be a marketplace, like a store. You can choose what agents. It'll be very transparent in terms of what things will bill, which ones won't. Some things will also be included as part of M365 Copilot. And so, for example, researcher, analysts, those specific ones, and those are like pretty amazing actually. The researcher in particular has become kind of like my favorite go-to. And so I don't know if you guys have tried that or have access to it, but I definitely recommend trying it because it is really good. Mr. Craig?
Just to add on, even from a third party, like there's one that I've been using for his demos and stuff. It's called Law Toolbox. So you can add it in as an agent, but you access it from M365 Copilot by just adding it. So just say add Law Toolbox and it will go there. So you don't have to go out to the Law Toolbox agent itself to do that. You can it'll pull all that information in and they're working on it. And as like sort of doing, if you say, tell me about this matter in general, it knows, hey, that's probably legal. Let's look at what agents you have access to. We'll go out there and get that. So I assume that even with the Microsoft one, and correct me if I'm wrong, if there are things that are premium, like you would be able to access it. But I'm going to liken it to almost Purview or some of our security stuff. Like you can get to all of that stuff in the security and compliance store, but things that aren't on, you might not have a license for, like automation for data loss prevention is an E5 license, right? So you can do stuff, or you just don't see it until you turn on the licensing, would be my guess.
If I could paraphrase it, the consolidation we're talking about means you've got one single point where you can see everything. Some of those things are included, some of them are free. It's all this sort of the choose what you want. You don't have to, it's not like, I now guess the analogy I use is Visual Studio versus Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio had everything in it. It was huge. It was people thought it was bloated. It was too big, but it was cool because it had everything. Visual Studio Code is, okay, it's small, just add the things that you want. Some of those things are free, they're included, and some of those things, there's a subscription they got to buy. And I ask because I get this question a lot. I show them something and say, can I do that? Well, you got to pay an extra $20 for that. And
The case still, if once you pay, that's it, you're in. This is part of the thing that I run into a lot. The L word, as they say, the licensing for it comes up quite often.
Sure.
And, my claim to fame to MVP was actually writing a licensing doc before Microsoft got their act together and made a beautiful PDF. And we had to go in and look and see first, what were they thinking to come up with that solution? They clearly were not trying to break things or make everyone unhappy. So what was the happy path to try to find that out? The happy path, in the case of like Copilot, was like you get a person with a Copilot license, $30, and they can do everything that's Copiloting. And you're pretty much done. But then there's going to be people that don't want to pay the 30 for whatever reason. That's the hard part. It's like, how do you say that I don't really need it and I'm not getting any value out of it? That's really hard to answer right now. But if they are not going to pay, then they have to do what's called, they have the concept of pay as you go, where somewhere someone's going to pay for it, the company usually, and there's messages going on. So for example, you see all these agents running around. Oh, they're not running around there for free. Someone somewhere is paying for them in some way, shape, or form. The question is, who is it? Is it included with that package? That's why we have Power Platform license, right? You get a package, you don't have to pay for every single transaction or everything you do. If you don't like it, you go to the Azure way, which was like compute time and workstation and all that stuff, and pay all the pieces, pennies on pennies, but they add up. So where do you want to go? What's easier to manage? Where's the ROI come in? That's almost where we get our job. We have to calculate all that stuff to figure it out. With this stuff though, it sort of like scales it out. So before we had like the concept of a message, and we had like 25,000 messages before you went to a next tier. All of a sudden I'm seeing this and like, well, we're going to go way beyond 25,000 messages for small use cases, because once this gets really viral, people will be like, oh man, I can't stop using it. And then like my SharePoint agent starts clicking up the tick, 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 the counts over there. And then someone has to ask about it. And we have to tell them like, look, there's ROI on this. I'm not sure if you guys have newer slides on business value from like Copilot Studios. Like you put this in, here's the value that we're seeing, or here's how you can calculate it. Because I know there's a business value calculator, but right now it's only looking at Copilot, right? It really should be the entire Power Platform, I think. You know, it's like, well, it's because, well, here's the thing, right? Copilot, when it does an agent, it's going to do workflows. Where do you think those workflows are? That's Power Automate or some other place. So all those Power Automate skills, hey, guess what? You've been doing agents. You've been preparing for agents all this time. Now you're ready to go. So you have to understand those. You have to have those skills. And if you're going to do business values, what's the value of that workflow working there, of that process working there? So I don't anymore look when I'm doing Plan Designer, for example. I wouldn't be looking at it as in here's all the pieces that go together. I would say, what is the process and what's the value of this process now that all these pieces are in play? Because I'm going to say, oh, well, the app gives me this value. Well, what about the process? Ooh, well, the process makes all these people lose their jobs. No, maybe that's not value or anything like that. What I'm saying is start looking at it in the big picture. You know, so that's why I'm hoping to share more of those kind of tools. I think some of them are going to be coming out and build, but all those kind of tools I want to get going. So I'm not sure if you can share any of these business value, how to convince the people to spend the money to get it done. Because I know that's probably one of your hard jobs to do.
Yeah, I mean, our take for our group, and there's different kind of calculations depending on the product, is very rooted in revenue.
Yes.
We can literally show, like the cost, because message pack is it's all consumption. So we know what the cost is per message. We know what the likelihood of each message that we send, like for example, SDR, the expected number of dollars it'll generate. So it's actually a really clear ROI story for this one. And so again, as you get more agentic, that happens. Copilot Studio also has a pretty good one too, depending on the use case as well. Like, so for example, if you're using it for customer support, you know what the cost is of a ticket to service If you have a human do it, it might cost you $10 or $8 or $50, depending on the complexity of the load. You obviously know the cost of your message, the tickets. You can literally just count the number of tickets that you deflected that were dealt by Copilot Studio, multiplied by the cost per ticket, and that's how much you saved. And so we have companies who are saving millions and millions of dollars doing that. So the story is pretty compelling, but it depends on kind of what the use case is.
Right.
But the consumption model is an interesting one because it basically puts us on a path towards value-based pricing, which I think is where we want to be. And it also de-risks things for the customer as well, because, for example, like instead of putting customers through a huge licensing dance, like for example, like if you take Copilot for Sales or Sales Chat, you first buy like an M365 Copilot license, and then you go buy a Copilot for Sales license. And then you got to line up those licenses and figure out like it's appropriate to the right people. And then you go, there's all these steps to it. Versus I can say, okay, I want to get like, let's say Sales Chat, and I just want to run Sales Chat. And I just want to try it out and see if it works. So if it's a consumption model, you don't have to worry about any licensing mappings. You just go and you try it and you pay for it like you would for any other type of consumption model like you do with Azure. Like, if I'm doing Bing searches through Azure or whatever it might be, like I know what I'm paying for, I can try it out and see, and then I can apply it to a larger volume if I want to. So it actually de-risks the trial phase for how to get started with our stuff. And that's the whole point. Because if you have M365 Copilot or even Copilot Chat, which we've now activated to our users, you now have access to our whole agent store. And you'll be able to try all these different agents. And because it's on the consumption model, it allows you to try things more quickly without having to really think about the licenses. So it's our attempt to simplify the story.
I will say one of the things I've reminded my customers of is who has the need for the agent. So Copilot for Security is a really, really good agent. I love it. Like if you ever played with it, but it's not something I'm going to roll out to my entire organization, right? There's like a handful of people that need that. So, and then you just to justify it by, again, Ralph's going, what is your process? How long does it take it? If I can streamline that down, like if I can cut that in half on the time that it takes you to do that, usually that pays for itself.
Beginning to find out that, well, maybe this is not a surprise. A lot of folks, when you say, hey, what kind of time will you be saving if I gave you this? No one can actually pinpoint it because no one is really tracking this. I'll give you an example. I just want to book a trip through my company, a travel agent or something. There are no necessarily metrics being kept about the entire experience. Some people don't bother when they say, how did you like the experience? They just skip it, right? They don't bother to answer. There's nothing really watching. Process Advisor came out and we could like sort of put a map on folks to see what's going on. So the problem for a lot of folks when they want to improve something is they're going to need to study it. They're going to need to get data. At the end of the day, I think we talked about this, data. If there's data, this will work. If you don't have data on something, it's basically, as they say, it's not garbage in, garbage out. It's called zero knowledge comes with zero knowledge coming back out. So the tool has that limitation, but that's probably for the best, right? It's going to force you to look at your data and say, oh, this is exactly what I'm doing.
I want to know what are you really excited about coming up in the next year?
Oh, yeah. I'm excited about this stuff. I mean, if you can get an agent that's driving you basically free money, I mean, I'll take it, And so we're just trying to build the best examples of agents end to end. And then if we can make them extensible, then you can make it your own. And we think sales, service, finance are really key ones. What's interesting about agents is there's a lot of excitement around these LLMs in the consumer world, when you go into ChatGPT or Copilot or else. But when it comes to agents, the most interesting agents by like SIM close, because the workflows are there and the business processes are there, and they're so ripe for disruption, and they have such huge impact if you can actually automate them. And we actually have this ability now to do it, and we couldn't do this before because the models just weren't good enough. Now these reasoning models are getting so good that they can take actions and they can do it pretty well. Like for example, we're talking about researcher agent. If you guys get access to research agent, you should definitely use it. Try it. It's quite good. And it's based on, like ChatGPT has kind of given us a lot of great models. One of which is like the O3 model, which is like a very a reasoning based approach. So researcher is kind of based on this. So that's why it has a very powerful model behind it. So it does take a few minutes to run. So it thinks for a while to get the answer. It also goes and crawls the web. It does all sorts of things to kind of build the best answer possible. But I was pretty blown away by it. Like I had I gave it like an academic paper. It's like dense math, paper, and then I said, hey, improve our code based on this new paper that came out last year. And I gave it to a researcher, and then researcher started crunching on it for a few minutes. And then it generated new code. And I was like, huh. So when we put it in and we ran it, it was faster than our old code. Wow. And not only that, but it actually generated higher results in terms of than our old code. And that was on the first try. But what was amazing is we actually read through it because they actually commented the code and explained how it did it, had citations in it. And we saw that the researcher agent not only had examined the whole paper and turned mathematical proofs into code, but it actually read the citations of that paper and went to those papers that I was linking to, and then read those and then turned those into insights, and somehow was able to bring it all together to generate this amazing code. And I shared it with a bunch of our leadership at Microsoft, and they were also blown away. And we don't even know what these models are capable of fully, to be honest. No one really knows. They're just getting better and better so fast. And so I think the fun opportunity is to it's to figure out what they can, to build apps that can make you.
So on the drive in, I heard this. I was listening to a podcast. They're talking about agents talking to agents.
Yeah.
And how that's going to revolutionize even further.
Yeah, multi-agents, agent to agent. Like even here, this is actually an example of agent to agent because the sales agent talks to the coding agent, which talks to the researcher agent to kind of build that website experience, research everything about the company. It's multiple agents coming together. And it actually enables not only better applications, but it's better reusability. Because as one of these agents get better, researchers are going to get better and better. So we don't want to keep re-implementing researcher. We'd rather just talk to researcher. And our agent kind of works with it. So we all will help each other. And that's where things get really powerful is when you have reuse. Same thing with software development. Java came out with all its libraries and classes and objects. It was powerful because you can reuse those capabilities. And so we're now at the ability where we're able to stack and reuse these concepts to build bigger and more powerful concepts. And so I think the next year is going to be very exciting to see what's possible. And it's kind of our job to build and show you guys what's possible.
One of our coworkers talks about how prompts and agents are like the next source code and tracking that.
Yeah.
So I think the last question for the community in this case, well, partners, we have access to all this stuff. We can go and we, as I say, we play with you guys, we commiserate with all the issues, we get the PTSD in advance, so to speak, get all that stuff going. But for the community, when they want to learn it and play with it, they might feel like this is like, oh, wow, you got to be like an IBM or a Walmart to use it. So, no, I believe the community can access this stuff. Is that going to be something a little bit more accessible for the community, especially for places that are not exactly at our level economically?
Yeah, I mean, so all the stuff that we're building on top of, whether it's like, so for example, there's a couple things. The chat experience, if you have M365, we've made the Copilot chat available to users. So you technically don't even need the high-end M365 Copilot.
For that.
And so you get access to the agent store. And if you have access to the agent store, you can then go and find agents, or you can actually create your own agents. And you can use Copilot Studio to do this, which is available for folks to go and play with and try. We have a million, I think we've announced in our earnings, like 1 million+ agents have been created through the system. And so you need a lot of users to go do that. And so it's an open platform for you guys to go and play with. These are also fairly self-service. And that's important to getting a community on it. And then as you kind of want to utilize some of these capabilities, like for example, the autonomous SC, our agent over time, we'll kind of make these things more self-service. Right now, we're kind of we're white gloving it with customers just to have that learnings and understandings to nail it first. But you can kind of work yourself up to this. But all the components of how we're building this is still leveraging a lot of the things that you have access to here. Researcher agents is something that this taps into. That's available. So a lot of the key capabilities are already kind of becoming self-service for customers to use and try. So I definitely encourage using it. The most important thing is just to use these things. And it doesn't even have to be for enterprise workflows, even for your consumer stuff. Like it is really important to understand how these tools work, because that's your competitive advantage. Like I know how to use some of these models like really, really well. And I know how to prompt it. I know how to do these things, and it makes me really good at my work. and it makes you really good at being able to build better apps because of it. And all the apps and things that are going to get built are going to be built on these primitives. And so the more you can play with it now, the better, because it's changing so quickly, so you can kind of stay on top of it.
Excellent. That was the inspiration, I hope, folks, for the community. And of course, if you get stuck, remember the socials out there from LinkedIn and everything else. You can ask any of us, MVPs or even Microsoft, we will respond. We will come together, even if it sounds like, if it says, of course, I hope you find this message finds you well. You know, it's a bot answering you is the only thing I can say. But if it doesn't say that, it's probably Ralph actually answering and being smart and saying, yes, here's what you can do and here's how you can access. I love this very much. Thank you so much for giving us the
Taking the time.
vision.
Thank you.
You